Hello everybody. I just wanted to make a quick video to give a little information on the mechanical drive and tab indicators. That's pretty common in a lot of offshore style boats. They used it in quite a few years. This was the original placard for mine, and this one says Kiekhaefer Mercury. But I've seen them that say Mercury Racing and just Mercury and quite a few other things. And so they marketed them under different names. It was really common. They used it in a lot of different boats, and there's a lot of them out there. I've seen some that just have two for the tabs or just have two for the drives. But there's a lot of them that have the four like this. The ones that have two work the same way. Obviously, there's just two of them. I pulled this out of my boat today. I'm restoring a 1988 cigarette bullet. And when I was doing these cables, when I was looking up the information on it, I couldn't find a lot of good information. I was able to find this drawing online that kind of has an exploded view from like a parts manual. It's pretty common online, it's pretty easy to find. It was useful on how the unit kind of went together, but it really didn't explain how to service it in the boat. And so that's when I thought I'd make this video real quick to try to help somebody else out, since I couldn't seem to find anything like I wanted, because I had heard horror stories about springs and losing parts and that sort of thing, and I was trying to minimize that as much as possible. So hopefully this will help you out too if you have to do one of these. I had to replace all four cables on mine. Mine were weathered on the transom area just from the sun being on them. The boat sit on the lift for quite a few years. And so I've changed all four of them. I just have one cable in here today. I brought one of my old cables in just so you could kind of see how it went together. And I just kind of have everything finger tight just to kind of give you an idea what to expect. One thing, probably the first part of this is there's no way to do this from the top through this area. You're going to have to gain access to get underneath this unit somehow. On my particular boat, I had to remove the instrument cluster. Obviously, boats vary and some will be different. So maybe some will have a panel that's pretty easy to get to. Mine was a little tough. It wasn't outrageous, but I did have to take apart a few things to get in there and get to it. The first thing that you'll have to get to is there are nuts here at the bottom of these threaded pieces when it's installed. There's a plate that goes on here that has the lights on it, so it's backlit. I didn't unwire that and pull that out of the boat, so obviously that's not here. But pretty self-explanatory. Take off the nuts, it just slides right off. No big deal. Then once you start getting the rest of it apart, you'll have to take this bracket off. And this bracket actually holds the cables. Obviously there would normally be four in here, but we just have one in here for demonstration. This unit actually holds the cable, it retains the cable, and then there's this large spring on here so that the cable actuates this pointer mechanism to show you where you're at. These work really good. It's a pretty simple setup, but it is easy to lose parts if you're not prepared. And one of the things that when I looked at the diagram and I was really trying to figure out was, when are these parts going to come out so I can make sure I catch them? Because I understand they're kind of hard to come by. The pointer mechanism that actually pushes through here that you actually see is spring loaded. And there's really nothing retaining this except where this bracket is. So once you start taking it apart, and like I said, you would have two nuts on here. I just got the one for demonstration purposes. You start to get loose here, and this unit right here, this pointer, is spring loaded. So you got the little pointer, and then you got the spring. And all four of those, if there were four in here like there would be if you were taking this out of your boat, basically get loose at the same time once this starts moving around. And it would be very easy for those to come out and lose them. So I recommend putting a towel behind there so you can catch everything. I did let one spring get away from me. It kind of went down in the bowels of the boat, but I was able to get it out with a magnet, so it worked out okay. But just be prepared. Once you start taking this unit loose, there's really nothing holding this mechanism except that spring and that pointer that rides in that slot. So be prepared to catch those. So then once you go ahead and take this unit off, you can pull this whole mechanism down, and obviously this will be in the boat. If this was mounted in your boat, this is where the instrument cluster would be. These spacer nuts would be up against the instrument cluster, and that's what would hold the bezel on. So you take all four of these off, there's nothing to it, just take them off. And then you can take the bezel out and set it over the side. I did go through and paint mine. I put a new piece of plexiglass in it and put a new decal on it to kind of modernize it up a little bit to kind of match my new gauges. Dustin Carter at Carter Powerboats made this decal. And so that I used his and kind of made it look new again. And once you have this mechanism out, This is a nylock nut. Normally it'd be a little bit tougher to get off, but I just have it finger tight just for our demonstration. And then you can pull this mechanism off that holds the pointer and the spring, and press the spring just a little bit. It kind of presses up against this bracket, so compress it a little bit. Take this small nut off. I believe a 5/16 wrench or socket gets this one off. And then once you get it off, you can let this spring off. And normally there would be 3 bolts in here. I just have 2 for our demonstration here. But this is what actually retains this cable in there. And the way it works is we'll take this 1 bolt out here. And once we get that out, we can kind of flip this unit up. And this piece with the bolts in it, so you can see it, this piece where that would be bolted in here holds this cable against this slot. And this slot is kind of tapered, and there is a groove cut in the cables so that it pushes it down in there, and that's what retains it. So you just kind of lift it up, kind of move it around, and then it comes right out. So not too big of a deal. It is time consuming. There's a lot of disassembly and little stuff, and I would allot a fair amount of time for it. You probably won't get, especially if you're doing all 4 cables, you wouldn't probably be able to get it done in 3 or 4 hours. You probably need a little bit more time than that, just because there's a lot of little parts. What I did was I went to the hardware store and bought a coupler. This is a 1032 thread, and they make a little small hex coupler. It's about 1 inch long, and I threaded it onto the end of my old cable, threaded my new cable in the other end, and then I just pulled it all through the boat like that. I've heard people say they could tape them together, and I'm sure that probably works. I like the the hex coupler, just because I felt like it was doing 2 things. I felt like it was covering the threads so they wouldn't get banged up when I was pulling it through the boat, so it protected the threads. And also I felt like that was a more robust mechanical connection between the cables, being that both of them were threaded in there. Pulled them through. It wasn't too difficult. They did get hung up in a few spots, and I kind of had to help them along and everything, but overall that went pretty well. Not a hard job, but it is a time-consuming job, so just be prepared for that. And hopefully this helps you guys out. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching.